All right. Wow, we got a lot of people on the call, and it is 11 o'clock Central, noon Eastern, sharp. We're going to get started. Welcome, everybody, to another episode here of D&M Presents. This month is sponsored by Thrive, and the topic is ransomware and overall general cybersecurity. There are a lot of people on the phone from D&M, but with me is James Peters. You'll see him on video, the D&M shirt. When we come around to Thrive introductions, I will introduce Michael, let him do his thing. I'm going to walk you through some stats, a little bit of state of the state, what's happening in the cyber world, some data that we pulled from great sources, and then we're going to keep that short. We want to spend most of the time allowing Thrive to walk us through who they are, what they've seen, the use cases they've come across, how they combat them most importantly, and then lastly, how they could be accretive to your organization. So without any further ado, we'll get started. For those of you who may be new to D&M and understanding D&M, you may be a customer at a company but have a new role there. We are a solution broker / provider. We have 230 companies in our ecosystem, and our job is to help our customers find the best solutions to their business problems and to fortify their infrastructure and their business operations. We have over 600 plus active clients. We span across multiple verticals from financial services, healthcare, retail, etc. Boy, we've delivered thousands of projects. I think this 1,500 is because we only started counting in the last 8 or 10 years, but we've been around for 23 years with less than 1% client attrition. And our job is to make sure we're bringing value to your organization, either by providing lower cost alternatives or by optimizing your business and helping you become more productive, doing more with less, driving revenue, et cetera. In our last estimate, we've helped companies achieve greater than $350 million in benefits over our time. Jumping right into the topic at hand, there's a recent quote that actually came out from Jay McBain this morning, and I felt compelled as I was preparing this morning to add it in as a last-minute slide. The bottom line is, ransomware attacks are growing faster than ever before. And on the publicly disclosed side, attacks surged by 96% in the first 4 months of 2024. That is pretty staggering. That's compared to the same period in 2023. I'm going to tell you why that's happening a little bit and where it's coming from. Ransomware and extortion, other extortion tactics are still rising. You see the hockey stick in 23 on extortion. And in the combined ransomware and extortion, the hockey stick continues to rise. This came from a Verizon report. But here's some interesting facts for you. Ransomware activity is back on track despite law enforcement efforts. So the federal government, global governments, regulators, FBI, all three-letter acronym agencies here in the States, local jurisdictions, et cetera, are all doing their best and their darndest to fight ransomware activity. But despite all of that effort, it's absolutely on the rise. 23 surpassed 22 by near 70%. Behavioral patterns are changing. The number of active ransomware groups doubled year over year, with a 55% increase from 29 distinct groups to over 45 distinct groups in Q1 of 2024. What's that mean? It means ransomware is good business for bad guys. That's what it really means. In simple terms, it's not going to grow, and there are not going to be more people going after it if it's not lucrative to the bad guys. It's very lucrative to the bad guys. It's very unfortunate, but it just is what it is. Paying ransoms is becoming a cost of doing business. I've had this conversation with leaders and organizations personally, and they are accruing funds now in the budget. It's become a line item in some people's budgets, if it's not already a line item for extra cyber insurance. So 67% in a survey by HelpNet Security said that a company would be willing to pay over $3 million to recover its data and restore its business processes. And 35% of those respondents would be paying over $5 million. The numbers have been greater than that in recent news. We'll talk about that a little bit here in the future, but our job here is to bring some awareness as to what's going on statistically, so you don't become a victim of the same, and that you can spend far less than $3 or $5 million to protect yourself, and also to avoid that nasty interruption of service that you would have. AI, everybody's talking about it. And boy, there are so many great uses for it. I can't stress how great AI has been in creating operational efficiencies, deflecting calls and work, and taking things, everything from automation to machine learning to generative AI, really, really optimizing business and making employees better at their jobs. But hey, we're not the only ones using it. Cyber criminals are harnessing it, and they're leveraging AI for malware development, new attacks, new vectors, new techniques, etc. And as you know, anything with AI, it's going to get smarter and better, which means they're going to get smarter and better at creating various vectors of attack. This was a late ad. I wanted to add this. I've had a number of roundtables in the last 2 months with senior leaders who asked me, "Hey, Vic, we'd love to get your thoughts on what's happening here and who's responsible for this stuff ultimately." I told the CEO, I said, "Well, hey, ultimately you are, right? You report to a board, and if you get a ransomware attack, everything rolls to the top. And while there may be some collateral damage down below, ultimately you are. But if you fit in any one of these buckets, and you have a responsibility to ensure that your organization is doing what it needs to do, or at least you're creating an awareness to the extent you can, that there are certain steps to take to make sure that you are much less at risk. Day zero attacks, I get it. These are the things we're not really prepared for. New exploits and new things that come your way, very, very hard to deal with. Michael and team are going to walk you through how to deal with that. But if you're the CISO, if you're in the IT security team, the CIO, if you're in staff, it might not be your direct responsibility, but if you get whacked and get a big financial hit, and people can't afford, a thick organization, they're going to have to thin it out. So that means they're going to come at you. If you're a third-party contractor and it's leaked to your negligence, you could be sued, your contracts could be terminated. And then lastly, where I started, executive management. That is, the buck stops here, as they say. And was it a movie where the guy said, "I am the buck"? I don't remember where I said that, where I got that. But the buck stops here at the top of the house. So if you're in any of these roles, you should be concerned about your risk. I don't like to stoke fear. That's not who I am. That's not who D&M is. But we care about our customers, and we care about it. And you'll be very surprised how little it takes, and relative to the value, what type of ROI you'll get in the things Michael and team will talk about. Well, we've seen Thrive be incredibly successful through our customer base and outside of our customer base. And I'm excited to introduce Michael and his team to you. So I'll leave the D&M, statistic charts. We'll make this deck available up on the website right after this call. And I'd like to introduce Michael Dietz from Thrive.
Hey guys, thank you, Vic, and thank you, James, the rest of the D&M team for allowing us to join you today. I'm Mike Dietz. I'm our VP of Channel Sales, and I support the relationship with D&M. I've worked with the team at D&M for many, many years now. With me virtually, I have Mr. Michael Gray. Mike, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey guys, Michael Gray, CTO here at Thrive. Been here a long time, but excited to share a little more about Thrive and as Vic said, how we're helping a lot of businesses out there trying to mitigate some of this risk.
So what we're going to do real quick, I'm going to take a minute just to give you all a little background on kind of who we are and what we do, just so you understand our depth and our breadth, and why Vic said all those great things about us, and why the team at D&M likes to work with us. And then from there, I'm going to turn it over to Michael Gray to dig in a little bit more on what we're seeing with ransomware, what are the common vectors that we're seeing attacks on, and what are some of the things that clients are doing to make sure that they're prepared. At the end, we do have something we'd like to offer as an incentive, or as a, I should say, as a just part of our relationship with D&M, we were able to offer some things to those who attended here today. So, Mike, if you want to turn the first couple of slides. Great. So Thrive is a next-gen managed services provider. We've been around for 24 years. We started as a regional MSP up in New England, and we know MSP. Everything related to MSP is things that we've been doing for a very, very, very long time. So traditional help desk, break fix, network services, patching, end user support, all those things that go into managed IT. And we've got a very mature process around all those things. The reason why we've been so successful and the reason why we've grown so much in the last 8 years is that we really identified a gap in the market where, there were cyber companies that didn't understand managed IT. There were cloud companies that didn't do managed IT or cyber. And then there were these managed IT companies that generally were small and regional and didn't understand or didn't have the capability to do any of those other things. So we leaned very heavily into cloud and cyber. We're going to spend a lot of time on cyber here today, but we are a full services MSSP. So in addition to providing traditional managed IT, we provide a full suite of MSSP services. We are not a security services reseller. We're about 1,400 employees. About 20% of the company works in cyber. We have our own security operations centers, 4 locations on 3 different continents, all staffed by Thrive employees. So what that allows us to do is really have a better understanding, or really look at, cyber in the middle as the core of everything we start with. And when there are incidents, because we have a traditional managed services division, because we have a cloud division, our clients see us as the orchestrator and remediator of that cyber program, whether we're directly providing all those services or not. So in some cases, we're just providing cyber, and we're helping with other areas and orchestrating with other areas. And in some cases, I'd say, clients, in the mid-market, 1,000 to say 2,000 employees, maybe down as low as a few hundred, we're providing multiple solutions to allow us to be that orchestrator and remediator. So we're going to send all this out as a follow-up. But again, as I mentioned before, we are a global organization. So we do have locations throughout the U.S. We've also have about 250, 300 people in the UK, and then folks in Asia Pac as well. So our methodology is that we're a global company, but we treat it, we're able to think locally when it comes to providing that hands-on customer support. So customers that are using us for traditional MSP services still feel like they have that local regional company to work with. And then lastly, I'll mention just some of the alliance partners that we use. So we are, I'll mention the one in the middle, we're powered by, kind of in the middle, we're powered by ServiceNow. So we are built on that very powerful ITSM tool. We have over 25 full-time employees that just do development inside of ServiceNow, so API integration workflows, things like that. That's what allows us to take all these other tools and deliver a best of breed solution to our clients. We, other than the aforementioned work in ServiceNow, we don't write our own software. We take what we believe to be the best in the business, whether it's Fortinet or SentinelOne or Kaseya, and we use those tools to be able to build a solution for our clients. So that's the end of the commercial. I hope everybody enjoyed that. But now on to, I guess, Mike, we're going to call you the star of the show here. So Mike's going to talk a little bit more about some of the current trends and events that we're seeing in cybersecurity.
Well, thanks for calling me the star. Hopefully I can live up to that. But, as I mentioned earlier, thanks for the time, everyone. We do these very similar. I don't want to necessarily call it a briefing because I think, as Vic mentioned earlier, he found a slide this morning to add to this. And I think we all are aware that the cybersecurity landscape is changing minute to minute, if not second by second. So we are going to go through a little bit of some recent history here, but let me just run you through a little bit of where we are, where we see things today. Now we work with Gartner quite a bit. I think some people are maybe a little bit divided on Gartner, but the really interesting thing that we get from working with Gartner is feedback from customers, right? And when I get that feedback, it really helps because it's unbiased when it comes from Gartner, because they're talking to so many organizations. But a couple quick notes of just some of the work that we've done with them and some of the research that we've consumed from them. And, you know, I would certainly concur, and I think a lot of people on the phone would concur with some of these facts, but you know, the key phrase here in this first one is the prioritizing of their security investments. You know, unfortunately, over the years, we've seen a lot of people who say, well, yeah, I do need a stronger endpoint product, but it's really not in the budget and I just can't spend the money. And then, of course, yeah, someone like me gets a phone call on a Friday night that that particular customer now has ransomware. Now, and I will tell you, just being transparent, as a service provider, the I told you so, it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help me, it doesn't help my business, it doesn't help my customer. And, you know, as Mike said, we're a full service provider. We can actually nurse that environment back to health. But again, I see over and over again, you know, those folks that are looking at security as a reactive event. Oh, you know, the CEO got phished, so now we need to think a little bit more about our email security. Those are the ones that consistently have attacks. Those are the ones that consistently have problems. And again, I told you so literally does nothing. And so we are always trying to get up front with these conversations and say, okay, let's talk about everything you have. Let's talk about maybe, okay, tell me what's working. Okay, great. How do we make sure that continues to work? How do we report on that? Where do you need help? Are things stalled in a project basis? Because I would tell you, whether it's a security project or an IT ops project that the security initiative depends on, we can get things over the finish line. And I have no doubt about that. We have a lot of people who are very well versed in a number of technologies. I will tell you, being on the product management, product development side, you know, we do so many things that what I find a lot of people doing at the beginning is, hey, we had this SD-WAN project stall and we can't get our zero trust because we don't have our SD-WAN. We can help get that SD-WAN project over the finish line so that we can get the next step done on your security roadmap. As Vic mentioned, obviously AI, and more specifically these days, there's a lot of people talking about generative AI. You know, internally, we use Gen AI to help us write code in a very secure way. But again, we're not the only ones using the Gen AI tools. The bad actors are using them in some ways almost more effective than those legitimate purposes. And I want to talk a little bit more about Gen AI because, to be perfectly honest, guys, I'm not allowed to go through a webinar and not talk about Gen AI. It's mandatory these days that when you attend a webinar, you got to talk about it. Cybersecurity mesh architecture we'll get to in a little bit more detail later on, but CSMA is a concept reference architecture that has been developed by Gartner, which basically says all of our security tools need to talk to each other. And they need to be pluggable in the sense that if I want to swap out my endpoint tool because there's some features of another tool, it should be able to plug into my mesh architecture. And Thrive is a huge fan of CSMA because we really base a lot of our offerings on CSMA, and we're bringing that mesh together. But I'll go into more detail on CSMA later here in some of the slides. So 2023 year in review, I'm sure you guys saw these. You know, when I look at these, I don't actually see logos. I see money lost and I see businesses impacted, but I also see types of attacks. So MGM Resorts was a phishing attack essentially, and some MFA exploits, right? They went after what I would consider a somewhat common channel. And, you know, MGM is now, they say they're going to lose $100 million from that attack. 23andMe was credential stuffing, and it was a really big black eye for 23andMe because their whole world is data about people. So they used credentials that were from other leaks, from other hacks, and they were able to get into 23andMe. Of course, 23andMe first came out and said, "Oh no, we didn't expose all this data," and then they had to retract that a couple weeks later. You know, very embarrassing on the PR front. And, you know, I was always pretty leery of 23andMe in the first place, and now, you know, I would never work with that organization. Again, I know they're trying to repair this and they're doing the right things, but when it comes to consumer confidence, you can lose an organization very quickly. T-Mobile was an API exploit, just sort of wasn't watching one piece of their network. And then Department of Defense, which happened where I live in Massachusetts, where somebody just thought it was cool to show off classified military documents, so insider risk. And then 3CX was a supply chain event, and they hacked a software supply chain, and all of a sudden the 3CX desktop client is now effectively weaponized malware running on everybody's machine. The 3CX one's a little bit interesting because 3CX had other options that they were trying to move to on the technology side. And, unfortunately, it wasn't until this cybersecurity event that it pushed them to say, okay, well, we have a better way of running these desktop clients. We just haven't forced our customers to it. And I will say I see this a lot, not only from Thrive, the corporation, but from our customers, which sometimes it's hard to push people to change. And you don't really want that cyber attack to be the thing that forces the change. I have the pleasure of running Thrive's internal cybersecurity team as well. Not all of our engineers liked it when we removed their admin rights, for example, but it was the right answer for the company. And we had to pay attention to productivity while at the same time securing our environment. Again, these things are not easy. They take a lot of project management. They take the right tools, but you can get there. This is not an insurmountable hill to go and mitigate a lot of your risk. So generative AI, and I don't know if anybody on the call has played with GPT-4. I use it quite a bit. I always take a second thought about what am I asking it. But I will tell you, even from the creative side of things on the social side, ChatGPT 4.0 is literally taking off. If you haven't tried it, I really would try it, especially the natural language now where you can speak to it. It came out last Tuesday. It really is unbelievable. It's the fastest to 100 million users by a significant factor. Instagram was 2 years. And we're seeing it everywhere. And I think a lot of times people are reading ChatGPT generated content and probably not even realizing it. So it is advancing. It is not slowing down. And the attackers know that as well. So not only do you have to think about how the attackers are using Gen AI to attack people, but also from a data protection standpoint. So how do I know my users are not uploading data to ChatGPT or sales data? I'll export some Salesforce information to CSV. I'll upload it to ChatGPT, and then I'll ask it, where are my best opportunities to grow my client base? We don't actually know that people are not doing that today. I would tell you on the Gen AI side, and we've had a couple of webinars ourselves, it starts with a policy, just like any other technology change. What's your policy around the use of Gen AI? Because at least if you write it down, you've taken a step forward and you've told your people this is how you handle this effectively, and this is what kind of data that we're going to use with Gen AI. On the IT ops side, we do a lot of co-pilot readiness as well, obviously with security in mind at all times. But I can tell you in the past 6 months, I think we've had, in addition to all of our other co-pilot initiatives, 250 customers add just one license of Microsoft Copilot. And it's really interesting. That means everybody's interested in trying it out. And what they're typically doing is buying it and giving it to the CEO. They're not really thinking about it from a readiness standpoint. But I also think that's exciting. At least people are interested. I can tell you a lot of other tools come out and we don't see any kind of growth like that. Microsoft being a huge investor in OpenAI, we use Microsoft's Azure OpenAI internally. And so they're very well committed to this. It really is going to change the landscape. It's not just a buzzword and it's not just a fad. I think I'm probably talking past the close here, but it is something that is going to profoundly change things. And obviously you can see there's pluses and minuses to it, just like everything. If you haven't started to think about what your strategy is or start to put a policy together, that is, I would say, absolutely job one. So ransomware attacks, believe it or not, and I think Vic mentioned this, are up. Everybody's back, and Vic mentioned the FBI. We meet with the FBI quarterly. The thing that's really interesting about meeting with our field office is, I wouldn't say that they're powerless, but there isn't some government organization that's going to come and save all these businesses. They're very transparent with us. They look at it as everybody needs to work together to try and take down some of these ransomware groups. And they ask Thrive for help just as much as we ask them for help. And so again, sometimes I think people in their heads start thinking about, well, there's the government's going to help and will step in and they'll find these people. They would tell you it's a very large group of people that make attacking small businesses, medium, mid-market businesses, their business outcome. That's why these organizations are put together. Interesting side note, in some nation states, the government employed hackers, they don't have enough money to pay them very high salaries. So what they actually do is they tell these state-sponsored, effectively employees, look, if you can go attack a company and you can ransom them for $50,000 US, $100,000 US, we can't pay you everything that you deserve, so you get to keep that money, even if it's not a state-sponsored attack. And especially some of the smaller countries, from attacks on the US, they look at it as, well, this is just how we do business. And there's very little recourse to that, at least at the moment, because it's hard to track. And so that's why you're starting to see, you see this ransomware continue to grow. And it is mind-boggling to me I'm someone in operations that deals with this and have seen how you can mitigate a lot of ransomware risks, that people are still getting ransom. We still get the organization that called and said, I know you guys told us, we need to change our security posture and secure these security stance, but we still got ransomware because we didn't make those investments. It really is amazing that it's continuing to happen. I don't know if was there a hand up briefly, Vic or Mike?
I was testing the hand raise because we're going to prepare for questions later. But while we rudely interrupted you, I will say that we'll start by taking questions queued up in the chat. So if you have them that you're holding on to, I'll moderate the chat. But I've got a list of pre-submitted questions from some of the folks on the phone and some who couldn't make it that will get the recording. So we'll get into a Q&A much later.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, and by the way, Vic or Mike, if you want to chime in as I'm going along, obviously I don't want to suck up all of the airtime here, but as you guys can probably tell, I'm pretty passionate about this topic and love talking about it. So just to jump forward a little bit, I would tell you, I love this slide, and it's that word "still" that sticks out to me. It is amazing to me that people still believe, like, well, they're not going to come and get me. Well, the fact of the matter is, it's not a human being deciding to go attack Mike. It's some scripts running. It's scanning the internet for open ports. It's running phishing patterns 24 hours a day. It's not a human being. It's a software development organization designed to attack your business. And it's rare that we don't see 100% human-led attacks. It starts with some script. It starts with they found a port open and we're able to pivot upon that. If we get a chance, I'll talk a little bit more about our automated pen testing, because it really does mimic what a lot of the attackers are doing out there today. This has been going on for a while. There are a lot of graduates, especially this time of year, in cybersecurity. There's still not enough. Building your own SOC team, especially if you're a sub 1,000-person company, maybe 1,500-person company, it's a very difficult thing to do. And what I will tell you from, we hire a lot of folks that maybe worked in the enterprise SOC. They get bored because, there's not a lot of different environments. They're not seeing a lot of different types of attacks. We deal with almost every vertical, similar to the way Vic was describing D&M. So we see all different kinds of attacks, all shapes and sizes, and we use those attacks to go do threat hunting in our entire security environment here at Thrive. So, again, these are things you have to think about when it comes to a shortage. These cybersecurity professionals can really work just about anywhere. And they want a lot of enrichment, maybe not even about the pay, to tell you the truth, which is really interesting. But so again, our environment, we see all kinds of things, and we do carefully share between those environments. Again, we sanitize our data when we go to do threat hunts and things like that. There are still executives that have a false sense of security. I have the benefit of our CEO is not technical. And when he and I first came into these roles, he said, look, there's two things that take down our company. The first one is a global economic meltdown or some sort of World War III incident that we can't control. The second's a cyber attack. So whatever Thrive needs to do to protect us and our customers, that's the number one priority. And I wish that other CEOs would take the same stance. Now, that doesn't mean I turn around and just empty our coffers on security tools, but I don't know of a time I've ever gotten turned down when it said, hey, look, we need to make this investment in security to protect our company. The answer every time has been, yes, tell me how it's going to work. And I really think that mentality, believe it or not, leads to cost savings at the end of the day. Because what I see is a lot of people that, well, they feel like the checkbook from the CEO or the CFO is only going to open once, so I better go buy all this stuff because I might not get another opportunity. Again, they're not treating it like an investment. They're treating it like sort of a simple IT costs. And so that's really an area that, if there's things to take away from this, it's talking to senior leadership and getting them to understand this is something that we need to care about every single day, not just when we read about an attack or have a scare inside our own environment. Obviously, the remote work and the expansion of OT, the landscape's ever growing. And with us, we have so many different landscapes to pay attention to. We've worked with organizations that are maybe protecting their Office 365, but really haven't done much to protect their manufacturing floor. And so that's one of the areas around our assessments that we do that really are very, very helpful, which is we can go and assess all those environments and the security controls that are already in place and see how effective they are. By the way, we don't take the approach of, well, Thrive's going to go assess customer X, and our assessment's going to be throw out all of your tools and use our services. Of course, we're a business just like anything else, but our assessments are very much unbiased, but also based on things we see every day. And we'll help you understand the investments that you've already made, whether or not you're getting a return on those investments. Because a lot of times we do see things that are working that people should continue with, but they don't see the gaps in their environment, or they don't see that firewall that you bought that you spent a lot of money on was not actually configured to stop the threats that you think it can stop. And our recommendation would be, let's turn this on. And then, of course, I've touched on AI quite a bit here, but the on both sides part being the key. It's not only being used by people like us to increase efficiency and be better about how to remediate things, but obviously for the bad guys, they're using it as well. A couple key questions, and I know I want to get to your questions, but these are the things that we typically ask folks when I sit down with them, because again, we see this every single day. When someone can't articulate their strategy, I can just skip to, okay, why don't we just start digging into the tools that you have? Because if you can't articulate the strategy, I have a feeling you have a significant number of gaps. And I'll just call attention here to the fourth one down. Policies that are written down or procedures that are written down around compliance and regulatory, if those don't match what's going on in the real world, you're going to end up with a big problem. It's almost better not having them written down if they don't match what's happening in the real world. We do a lot in just about every regulatory a requirement globally. We have to work on them ourselves for Thrive, but we do financial services, healthcare and biotech, different state-based requirements, things like that. There are very few requirements that we can at least consult with and talk through. And again, usually that's actually a good conversation starter with senior executives that feel like, oh, this is just another thing I have to deal with. So certainly can help you there as well. I'll just, Vic, I know we're going to get to your questions, so I'll come back here if we need to. Do want to touch on this, and I'm just about done here, but we see this all. Mike Dietz runs into this almost constantly. Oh, I bought, endpoint tool X, and I already invested, and it solves everything we need. Is anybody watching it? Have you tested it? Can we go through some of the reports to see if it's working? Employee X worked here for 20 years. That's fantastic. I'm sure they're a good employee. That doesn't mean that they have all the training and all the experience and all the knowledge to really tackle some of this stuff. A lot of those 20-year employees will be the first ones to admit they need help. And they want help. They want someone looking over their shoulder because they don't want to be held responsible for all of this. The recommendations being too complex or inconvenient, I kind of touched on that earlier. I can show you the most inconvenient users. Trying to secure 800 IT people, it's an uphill battle, but we do it. And, it's a culture change, it's a culture shift, but, we can easily articulate the value to the business. That's not the hard part. It's actually seeing the project through till the end. Okay, great, you bought a new tool, you rolled it out to 200 people. Great. When are we doing the other 800 people? And I would say a lot of times you get to the other side of it, it is not as bad as people view it. Having removed administrator rights from 800 IT people's workstations, once we got them on board and they understood what we needed to do, the project was actually pretty easy at the end of the day. We had to be thoughtful about it, but we got everybody on board and we got everybody to understand the business reasons for doing it. And I will tell you, it was a huge increase to our security posture. Budget and cyber risk, very simple. I view cybersecurity protection budget as its own line item. I don't have it underneath IT. It's its own item. It's its own initiative, just like accounting, or department, just like accounting or HR or finance, any of these things. You need to treat it as its own animal. We calculate based on the employee. So, for instance, $27 per Thrive employee to secure Thrive. That's how we do our budgeting, and we look at it across all of our tools, and then divide it by the number of people, and that's how we get to our answer. And a cyber insurance policy is really great if you have an incident, and they will pay some amount of money to help with that specific incident. It is not going to save the day. I deal with the cyber insurance question almost daily. The insurance companies are not designed to lose money. They're going to get you back to generally where you need to be. Also, we're seeing a lot more of, well, you actually filled out a form that said you had all these tools, and now it's abundantly clear from the attack you had, you don't actually have those tools. And look, there's all kinds of different insurance providers going all kinds of different audits, but it really has not saved, I think, a customer a significant amount of money after an attack. Certainly not the damage that's been done to their reputation with their customers. Insurance cannot help you there. We're working a lot of frameworks. Whatever you might bring to us, we can certainly help with those frameworks. But what we really want to do is look at how those frameworks not only meet your compliance needs, but increase your posture to repel some of these attacks. All of our consulting is based on the CIS security framework, if those of you are familiar. So if you want a CIS assessment, that is the basis of our cybersecurity risk assessment, or CRA, which Mike can talk to you about. Not to belabor the point, but everybody's security program is different. We don't say, well, I'm HIPAA. Well, there's more to it than we need than simple enough of I'm HIPAA. So we look at the business. We look at the controls you have in place, combine those with the frameworks and the compliance regulations, and we put together a comprehensive report on your risk. It's all evidence-based. So our consultants will actually get into your environment in a read-only standpoint, but we will actually go and look and make sure that all this stuff is there, not just take somebody's word for it. And I promise I'm coming to the end. Everything's best practice based. So we will provide you a very simple scorecard at the end of our assessments that will show you how effective these different tools are, where you need some work. It is something that is not really designed for an IT person, although of course they can consume it. It's meant for a C-suite. So, and it's a build towards a formal cybersecurity program. You know, we can do the work of getting in front of your C-suite for you. And a lot of times what we find is we're making the same recommendations that the technical folks had already been making. And it's really a second piece of the evaluation there to show, yes, your team is very well qualified. They do know what they're doing. You do need to give them these investments because we see this kind of thing every day. So I'm going to pause here. Because I got to the section that we wanted. Vic, Mike, I don't know if you want to add anything, or we can start in on some questions.
I want to change up a little bit. We got a little extra time here, and I wanted to get more to a dialogue around some things. Bring forward based on some of the questions that were submitted to me in advance. But I think I'm gonna phrase this the best I can here. We talked to a lot of people. And we have a lot of clients that are they're in financial services. Maybe it's the mortgage business, maybe it's the credit card business, which is just cracking wide open now. But financial services and really the economy is struggling. There's a lot of stuff going on, and budgets are getting shrunk, and people are searching for efficiencies. And to your point, we come across people in technology that they know what their risks are. They know what's going on. They either self-identified that there's a gap in their strategy for cyber, or they have one but yet not have gained support in getting that, in fortifying that. Hey, we just don't have the money. Hey, rates are down. We used to do 1,000 loans a day, and now we're doing 50 loans a day, and they're already down to bare bones. They come to work, they're frustrated, they're nervous. I used to say this all the time during my days as a CIO. The entire C-suite believes that because they spend X amount of dollars on DR, that if there was a true catastrophe, which has 50 faces on it, you're never prepared for all of them, that somebody's going to hit a button and all the systems are going to come up somewhere else and everything's just going to work perfectly. Until cloud computing made that possible from an elasticity perspective, I had never worked for an organization, nor had I ever put a practice together where that really worked. There was work involved. Sure, we did our exercise and could recover. What would you tell the people on this call who are potentially struggling in that same space, where they know what's going on, or maybe they need a little help, but they're getting, knocked down from a budget perspective, and people are just saying we don't have the money, to sort of help make a case to help them help themselves, so to speak, meaning the executives of the company, make some other trade-offs maybe around, what is your experience seen, and how have you been able to help people navigate that pathway?
Yeah. I'll give you an example of just sort of starting at home. So I mentioned our own process around budgeting for cybersecurity internally. The first thing that I would recommend, and what I did years ago with our CISO, is sat down and said, all right, let's first look at where the money is currently going. Because, Vic, I think you said there's this assumption that I'm going to hit this button and all these things are going to all of a sudden just start working or repel these attacks. I don't think enough goes into analyzing the current cybersecurity spend. And I think that's an easy thing, for folks on this call to do, and literally laying it out and trying to get to that number. How much are we paying per person on our cybersecurity? Okay. And then, I think that really starts a path to So we're paying X amount of dollars per year or per person, but I would tell you we're still susceptible to phishing attacks because we don't have enough controls there. I think that when you get down to that per person spend, and then you say like, well, now you've sort of got the hook in the mouth, I would say, and the next logical question is, well, how much would it cost us per person to improve our email security? Well, it's $3, it's $5, something like that. Now you're going from $23 to $27. It doesn't feel like a massive investment. And on the flip side, it's very easy to see and get data about what the cost of cybersecurity phishing attacks cost. 100 million. You can actually, if you think about it, you could go Google how many people MGM has, and start doing some very simple math and say, look, $3 a person will save us a potential loss of $20 per person. And I think that's where people sort of lose. I would tell you as an engineer, we engineers talk about the technology way too much. We have got to put it in business terms for those other folks that don't get the technology. They look at it as, well, Mike's got it, right? Like, yeah, he'll make do. You need to find a way to put it in their terms, put it in a CFO's terms, and get away from the technology and turn it into a business conversation. That probably feels like common sense, but that's where our assessments really help. And I don't mean to make this a Thrive commercial, but just to drive this point home, when we say the same thing that the folks on this call are saying, it does lend some credo to it. It does lend okay, this isn't just, employee X thinks this is a good idea. This is an industry standard, and we don't meet those industry standards, and that's why we might be a target of a larger attack.
I got a follow up to that. The follow up to that would be, how often do you get inside and when you assess what are we spending on tech for cyber, I should say, per person? Do you often come across a sort of an imbalance in overspend in one component of a cyber versus, I always call it the steel door at the front and the beaded curtain at the back.
Yeah. Well, and again, I'm very transparent person, especially when it comes to dealing with cybersecurity. My number one cost here at Thrive is human-led penetration testing around our custom applications. And, I looked at it on paper. I knew we spent a lot of money, but I didn't know that was the number one share. But then I looked at the value we got from it because we do automated and human-led. Now, what I would tell you, more to the point, is a lot of money being spent out there securing offices that nobody goes to. Right. And when you see, hey, it's $27 per person that we're spending on security, and 30% of that is going towards our next generation firewalls for offices that nobody attends, and then we're planning on shutting down. That's where I still see, because people know how to put firewalls in. They understand the technology. It's to some degree old attack paths. I mean, certainly firewalls still work, of course. But yes, Vic, I do see a lot of people didn't even realize that they were putting money in places that didn't even really matter anymore. They were just, well, somebody made that decision 5 years ago. What I underspending is on SaaS security. Monitoring M365 for even the most basic of attacks. That's where I think we're really lacking because, again, we made a decision pre-pandemic. We put all this stuff in, and I don't know, people started working from home, but we didn't really keep that whole program up to date and really keep looking. We look quarterly on where that money is going, not just yearly, because things are changing so much. Okay, you know what? Let's move some of this money that we had in firewall into zero trust. Yeah. And it helps you build a very clear roadmap.
Have you guys been contacted after the fact, and you don't have to say who or what, but by anybody who got hit with ransomware where they called you guys and said help?
More times than I can count, Vic.
Okay. So then,
and by the way, I don't mind saying that. I'm not embarrassed saying that.
No. I understand. I knew that was your answer, but I want to make sure you were comfortable saying it. So can you walk us through a recent ransomware attack use case and steps taken to mitigate it?
Sure. I'll share with you
folks.
What's that?
Yeah. We will not name names to protect the innocent.
Oh yeah. No worries. So interesting situation, as they always are. We had it was a large transportation company, and we were doing a good portion of their cybersecurity. In fact, we were covering the estate quite a bit. They had said, okay, for whatever reason, business reasons, really more relationship reasons, they were leaving Thrive and going to another provider. I know this surprises you, but that happens. And it happens to us. And they had removed all of our tools. Our SIM was gone. The only thing we had left in the environment was our EDR. And their contract had come to an end. And we were just working to offboard them. Well, our team detected that they were under attack. And their new provider had only sort of half rolled out the security tools. And, our team was, security analysts and security engineers, and I think this is everywhere, but certainly at Thrive, they take a lot of personal responsibility. And they came to me and said, look, these guys are under attack, and they're clearly ransomed. We want to respond. And I said, then let's go and respond. What was interesting is they'd revoked all of our credentials because they moved over to the new provider. All we had was our EDR, and it was only stopping attacks just on the area that we had still covered. Long story short, their new provider couldn't actually repel the attack or restore them back to where they needed to be. We ended up, again, I don't want somebody's businesses to be brought to its knees because of an "I told you so" card. We have to do the right thing. There's people that depend on working at this business, and their families depend on it. Not to stand a soapbox, but we did a project to repel the attack, remediate the ransomware by doing restores. We were obviously very aware of their infrastructure, and we nursed them back to health. Not the way I would dial up to get a customer back after leaving us, but we did the right thing. I think some would argue, well, you maybe went too far. Okay, I'm willing to have that conversation, but these things happen, and I don't think anybody did anything maliciously. It's just bad timing. But is there ever good timing to have a cyber attack? And I can cite a lot of examples of things like that have happened. Somebody just wasn't paying attention to everything that was going on and ended up in a really bad situation.
Hey, we got a question that came in via email.
Okay.
And what are the top 3 effective strategies for preventing ransomware infections? Top 3 to prevent ransomware.
I'm going to give you an old school one. And I love this one. If you're hosting servers, whether it's an AWS, Azure, or a private cloud like a provider with Thrive, GeoIP blocking is on a firewall. It's one of the simplest things you can do. It probably costs you exactly nothing to turn on. Asking our customers a very simple question: what countries should be able to communicate or connect to your servers? Where do you do business? I only do business in the US. Great. Let's go turn on geo blocking. And I would say this in all of your SaaS tools as well, beyond just ransomware. It is the biggest no-brainer in the world, because usually people can answer that question: what countries do you do business in? And I see it over and over again. Why are you opening up your environment to Romania? If there's no reason to do that, then let's just turn it off. And I think what I'm really tapping into here is attack surface reduction.
Okay.
You're sitting there wide open, and you're not even thinking about how you can just decrease with some very simple controls. And along those same lines, network segmentation, when it comes to infrastructure, is far and away one of the most effective ways to repel ransomware attacks. The firewalls are actually very good at doing this, and it will help stop pivots inside the network and a variety of other things. The network segmentation that we use, our team, they weren't a fan of it 7 years ago, and I said, guys, this is the way to do things. And over again, our penetration testers that we contract hate doing pen tests for Thrive simply because of network segmentation. And I'll just give you the two more. Obviously, EDR. There's plenty of technology out there that can repel attacks locally on a machine. But again, if it's not installed or not turned on, it's not going to be effective. And I guess number 3 there, which tags on, is asset management. Well, if you have 300 laptops and you only have 273 in your EDR console, you can plan on those others getting ransom.
Okay.
Yeah. And Vic, if I may here, I know it's not necessarily a tool per se, but I think back to the earlier point, which is one of the things we wanted to share today, is really having that validation. Look, we're a services provider. We start a lot of engagements with our clients. I mean, I know lots and lots every month. We have our certified security professionals doing fully validated assessments, showing you the data. You think you have a next-gen firewall, but the next-gen features are turned off. That's a real thing we see every day. You say you're using multi-factor authentication. However, true story, we had a client that when we logged into 365, they had inadvertently turned off multi-factor authentication for the global administrative user. Now, I'm not saying that was intentional or not, but these are things that people think they're covered and they're not. So having that fully validated assessments lets people know where they need to invest. It gives them definitive proof. And what we're also doing is we're including an autonomous penetration test for D&M clients to do the assessment. That using that AI, that is the number one tool the bad guys are using. So let the good guys use the tool to identify where your weaknesses are before one of the bad guys gets in and does it to you.
Yeah. Michael, we've got 4 minutes left. Dietz, we're going to come back and review that offer in a second. I'm going to ask a last question here that was popped in. And it's a real good one. This is a great question. It says, how should an organization prepare its incident response plan for ransomware effectively throughout their organization? Meaning, what should I tell my people to do if we get knocked on our back? Like, what do I tell? What's my communication plan? How do I address that? Because listen, when it hits the fan, people are running in 50,000 directions. And I was many years ago involved in a day zero virus. It wasn't ransomware, but it was a virus. And this was a very long time ago. And boy, when I tell you hub and spoke, people were flying and it was all about crisis management. So what would you tell people specific to ransomware? What are the things they can do to prevent it from it being their responsibility? And what would you do during a crisis? And how can people participate and or stay out of the way?
Yep. Well, I'm going to go around your question quickly because I want to give you a very simple answer at the beginning of this. Tabletop. Part of the problem is you write a plan about how we respond and you never test the plan. You never pretend. It's interesting. For some reason, Vic, people can't find the hour to sit down and say, guys, I need to teach you what's going to happen. Yeah. And so let's pretend 10 minutes ago that our server's been ransomwared. It is the most effective way to answer that question because you need to put them in the mindset that it happened. They think this is something that's going to happen somewhere else to some other company. And they say, well, I'm going to, the first thing I'm going to do is shut down our servers. Okay, well, how do you do that? Well, I call our IT person. Okay, well, you don't have his number because you lost your phone that day. You've got to put them through these techniques. Now, as far as the IRR plan goes, exactly, establishing roles is a key. Who has what role? Because I think sometimes we dump all the roles onto the technical person. When 7 or 8 years ago, we first did our IR planning internally for Thrive, I invited marketing. The marketing person said, I don't know why you invited me to this call. Because if our customers are impacted, I need you to talk to the customers because I'm going to have the techs fixing the problem.
Absolutely.
And so role establishment, I really think, is number one to answer your question directly. Yep. And again, you can test out those roles with a tabletop.
All right. Hey, Mr. Dietz.
Yes, sir.
Tell us what we've won.
So for any of the D&M clients coming out of this that chooses to do or hires Thrive to do one of our cyber risk assessments, will include an autonomous pen test, which has a one-time cost of $8K. We'll include that at no cost as a special thank you to the lovely team at D&M and to your clients.
Fantastic.
Mike,
we appreciate that.
Oh, sorry. Just one quick note. I'm going to paste a link to a LinkedIn post from the individual that leads our automated pen test team about a really amazing test he did for somebody. It's sort of mind-boggling, but I pasted it here in the chat. I would really take a look at it, but that's exactly the kind of activity that we would be providing. Sorry, Vic, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. Hey, we finish webinars on time. We value your time. Thank you for everybody who's participated today. We have our follow-up activities coming. Feel free to reach out to us. We will certainly be reaching out to all the attendees today as a follow-up. Michael, James, and everybody from D&M who's online, thank you so much. Have an awesome day.
Thanks, guys. Our pleasure.
Bye.